I fell in love with a customer who came to buy flowers every single week. He was always in a rush, picking up nothing but our cheapest white daisies. My heart always ached at the deep exhaustion shadowed in his eyes. Every time he came, I would painstakingly trim the stems and leaves. That was until the floating chat comments suddenly materialized right there, drifting amidst my sea of blossoms. Oh my, the male lead is buying those flowers for his dead first love's grave. She actually thinks he's a hopeless romantic like her. Does a baby's breath symbolize a love destined to remain in the background? Is she trying to confess or something? Cringe. When a girl gets this desperate, it's honestly worse than a guy. Actually, he hates those extra flowers. He plucks them out and hands them to the street sweeper the second he walks out. Whatever, he's about to meet the female lead anyway. Once our rich heiress gets jealous, she'll just buy this shop and force this annoying florist into a brutal, endless corporate shift. My hand slipped, and my shears sliced clean through the stem, cutting the flower right in two. It was Thursday again, exactly 4 in the afternoon. At this exact hour, Gideon would always arrive. For the past 6 months, rain or shine, he would push open the glass door and step inside. He always smelled of the damp, cold city air, his dark eyes shadowed with exhaustion. His voice was always a quiet, low rumble. Just a bundle of white daisies, please. My heart ached for him. Every time I looked into those deep, storm-ravaged eyes, I felt like I was looking at a weary traveler with nowhere to go. Because of that silly, unnamed flutter in my chest, I insisted on wrapping his flowers myself. Daisies were cheap, only $3 a stem, and he only wanted 10. Behind his back, I would secretly tuck thick, fluffy stems of pure white baby's breath into the spaces between the daisies. I thought of it as a silent comfort, a quiet way to cheer him up. Until just a moment ago, when a cascade of scrolling chat comments materialized in midair, floating right above the blossoms. My hand shook. The sharp metal blade sliced clean through the thickest stem of my freshest daisy. The small flower, with its bright yellow heart, tumbled onto the cold floor, rolling into the damp gray dust. The rain outside was loud enough to drown out my sudden, ragged breath. Oh my god, why is this supporting florist giving herself so much screen time? The male lead is buying those flowers for his dead first love's grave. She actually thinks he's a hopeless romantic like her. Does a baby's breath symbolize a love destined to remain in the background? Is she trying to confess or something? Cringe. When a girl gets this desperate, it's honestly worse than a guy. Actually, he hates those extra flowers. He plucks them out and hands them to the street sweeper the second he walks out. Whatever, he's about to meet the female lead anyway. Once our rich heiress gets jealous, she'll just buy this shop and force this annoying florist into a brutal, endless corporate shift. My small florist shop was the result of years of grueling work. I had worked 3 part-time jobs after college, living on instant noodles for 2 years just to save up enough to rent the space. Since when did my hard work become a cheap backdrop for someone else's romance game? The brass wind chimes jingled, bringing in a draft of cold air that rustled the dried lavender on the counter. I looked up. Gideon had arrived. He wore a long black trench coat, his dark hair damp and clinging slightly to his pale forehead, making him look strikingly handsome. Just a bundle of daisies, please. He unbuttoned the top collar of his coat, his voice as deep and steady as ever. Normally, my heart would have fluttered. I would have worried about him catching a cold in the rain and stuffed his bouquet with as much baby's breath as the paper could hold. But now, those mocking chat messages were still drifting right over his head. Look, the male lead is here for his daisies. Cue the florist's pathetic self-indulgence. I took a slow breath, letting go of the baby's breath in my hand and letting it drop into the green waste bin beneath the counter. Of course, give me just a moment. I forced a bright, perfectly professional smile. I grabbed 10 stems of daisies, wrapped them in plain brown craft paper, and tied the bundle with a simple piece of jute twine. No baby's breath, no elegant layering, just a plain, $30 bouquet of daisies. I slid the bundle across the counter. That will be $30. The card reader is on your left. Gideon reached out. His fingers paused against the rough paper. He stared at the bouquet for a second. Usually, the arrangement was lush and blooming. Today, it looked stripped down, almost naked. He raised his eyes, those dark, inscrutable depths fixing on mine. I met his gaze with my polite, unyielding customer service smile. Without a word, he tapped his card. The machine beeped, confirming the transaction. He picked up the meager bouquet, turned, and stepped back out into the pouring rain. Above his retreating figure, the comments flickered again. Wait, what? Why didn't she add the baby's breath today? Did she finally wake up? Doesn't matter anyway. He would have just thrown them away like usual. The comment about him giving them to the street sweeper felt like a splinter in my mind. Becca, watch the register for a minute. I need to run out, I told my assistant, grabbing a clear plastic umbrella from the stand and pushing through the door. I kept a safe distance behind Gideon. He walked slowly, his black coat cutting a solitary figure against the gray streets. About 2 blocks away, near a bus shelter, he stopped. An elderly woman in an orange safety vest was leaning against the glass to shelter from the rain, holding a worn broom. I hid behind a convenience store sign, watching through the edge of my umbrella. Gideon approached her. The woman looked up, her tired face breaking into a familiar smile as she looked at his hands, expecting something. Oh, hello, young man, do you have? Gideon tilted his head slightly. His voice was muffled by the rain, but I heard him clearly. I'm sorry, ma'am, not today. The shop didn't include the extras. The woman's face fell slightly, though she quickly waved her hand. Oh, that's all right, dear. Get along now. It's pouring. Gideon nodded, held his simple bundle of daisies close, and boarded the city bus toward the suburban cemetery. I stood on the wet pavement, my knuckles white around the handle of my umbrella. The comments hadn't lied. There was no silent understanding, no sweet habit. He didn't want my silent comfort. The extra flowers I had lovingly tucked in were just a nuisance he cleared out of his way. A weekly charity handout for a stranger. You really outdid yourself, Naomi, I muttered, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. I didn't go back to the shop. Instead, I hailed a cab. Follow that bus, please. The driver gave me a knowing look through the rearview mirror and hit the gas. We pulled up near the gates of the hillside cemetery. I watched Gideon walk past the stone archway, his dark coat disappearing among the rows of gray headstones. I waited until he left before I stepped inside. The air was heavy with the scent of wet pine and cold stone. Following the clues from the comments, I walked up the wet stone steps to the third row. I stopped in front of a clean marble headstone. The photograph on the stone showed a young girl. She had deep, lovely dimples and bright eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stars. In loving memory of Rosalie Jenkins. My breath caught. I knew her. 6 months ago, she was a regular at my shop. She used to wear light purple sundresses, looking like a blooming iris. She never bought expensive arrangements. She only wanted pink hydrangeas, holding them to her chest with a smile sweeter than the flowers. Sometimes, she would press homemade cookies into my hands while we chatted about the weather. Then, she just stopped coming. I had wondered if she moved away. I never imagined she was lying beneath the cold earth. The cold rain dripped down my face. Looking at her picture, then remembering the hollow look in Gideon's eyes, everything clicked. Gideon was never the lead in my story. He was a grieving man trapped in a past he couldn't escape, while I had been stuffing his morning bouquets with baby's breath, symbolizing a quiet confession of love. How foolish, how incredibly inappropriate. I'm so sorry, Rosalie, I whispered to her picture. Leaving the cemetery, I tossed a damp, crumbled tissue into the trash, along with the ridiculous crush I had nurtured behind my counter for 6 long months. Gideon was just a heartbroken soul, and I needed to go back to my shop and figure out how to pay next month's rent. Over the next few weeks, my shop returned to its quiet routine. Gideon still came every Thursday at 4, and I served him with polite, professional distance. No extra flowers, just business. Why did you stop adding the baby's breath, Naomi? Becca asked one day. It's out of season, I said simply. Not worth stocking right now. The comments above Gideon's head were baffled. Wait, did she actually give up? It's been weeks. Maybe we broke her spirit. Doesn't matter. The real female lead is about to show up. This florist's time is running out. One afternoon, as I was arranging fresh ranunculus, the chat suddenly went wild. Here she comes, the main event. Get ready. Our rich girl is going to humble this little shopkeeper. A woman in a tailored Chanel suit and an Hermes Birkin bag stepped into the shop, followed by a sharp-looking assistant. Who's the owner here? Her voice was sharp, dripping with casual arrogance. I wiped my hands and stepped forward. I am. How can I help you? She scanned me from head to toe, her eyes filled with cold amusement. Wrap me a bouquet. Of course. What kind of flowers do you prefer? Instead of answering, she strolled around the shop, stopping by the daisy bucket. She tapped a white petal with a manicured nail. I hear Gideon buys these here. Here it was. Yes, I replied smoothly. Gideon is a regular customer. He usually prefers the white daisies. Bianca, the heiress from the comments, let out a sharp laugh. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Whatever pathetic little fantasy you've been playing at, drop it. A girl like you has no business dreaming about someone like him. I met her eyes calmly. Miss, you've misunderstood. The extra flowers I used to put in Gideon's bouquets were just older stock we needed to clear out before they spoiled. It was a simple business decision to minimize waste. Since we adjusted our inventory strategy, we no longer have surplus to give away. Bianca blinked, utterly thrown by my dry, practical response. She had probably rehearsed a dozen insults, but my sheer corporate pragmatism left her with nothing to bite on. Make sure it stays that way, she snapped, turning on her heel. In her haste, she kicked over a potted plant by the door, leaving in a huff. The next Thursday, Gideon arrived at 4. I assembled his daisies. Just as I was about to hand them over, he spoke. Why? He hesitated. Is there no baby's breath anymore? I paused. I hadn't expected him to ask. Oh, we adjusted our inventory. We don't stock extras anymore. The chat exploded. Oh my god, he noticed. Is this a plot twist? She's playing hard to get. What a snake. I kept my face neutral. Gideon looked at me, a rare flicker of emotion in his dark eyes. I liked it better before, he said quietly, taking the bouquet and leaving. I froze. Outside the window, I spotted Bianca's assistant holding up a phone, recording the exchange through the glass. This was going to be trouble. The next morning, Bianca's assistant returned, tossing a buyout contract onto the counter. The offer was insulting, barely half of the shop's market value. Sign it, the assistant said. You'll stay on as manager, but you'll be working for Miss Bianca. No, I said, pushing the paper back.